The school bus had 4 flat tires, a cracked windshield, and a family of raccoons living under the back seats. The county was going to crush it for scrap. Jennifer Kowalski paid $80 for it and cried the whole drive home, because she didn't have a home. She had 3 kids, a storage unit full of furniture, and 11 days left at the shelter. Everyone in Millbrook watched her park that rusting yellow Hulk on her sister's back lot. Neighbors whispered. Her sister doubted. Her kids, ages 5, 8, and 11, pressed their faces against the cracked windows and said, "Mom, is this ours?" She told them yes. Then she stayed up until 2 a.m. watching every tiny home conversion video she could find, took 14 pages of notes, and started tearing out seats at dawn. But here is what nobody knew about Jennifer Kowalski. She had not always been the woman standing in muddy boots beside a broken bus. 3 years earlier, she had been a licensed interior designer with a thriving small studio, a warm apartment with window boxes full of herbs, and a life that felt, for the first time in her 34 years, completely steady. She had built that life carefully, the way you build anything worth keeping, slowly, with both hands, paying attention to every detail. She had picked out the paint colors herself. She had hung the curtains herself. She had planted those herbs herself, watering them every single morning before her kids woke up, because that small ritual made her feel like someone who had her life together. Then her landlord sold the building. Then her studio lease ended and the new rent was double. Then her car needed an engine. Then her oldest son Marcus broke his arm at school and the medical bills arrived in a single white envelope that somehow weighed more than everything else combined. These things did not happen all at once. They happened the way real hardship always happens, one reasonable explanation at a time, each problem just slightly larger than the last, until one Tuesday morning Jennifer stood in a shelter intake office filling out paperwork and realized she could not remember the last time she had felt steady. She never told her kids how close the edge was. That was her first gift to them, the performance of calm. Every morning at the shelter she brushed her daughter Lily's hair and told her it was an adventure. She helped her middle son, Danny, with his homework at the small table in the corner of the room they shared with 2 other families. She read to her youngest, Noah, every single night, doing all the voices, making him laugh until the other family smiled too. She was exhausted in a way that had no bottom, but her children never saw the exhaustion. They saw their mother. The bus appeared on a Thursday. Jennifer had been spending her lunch break scrolling through municipal auction listings, looking at cheap land, cheap structures, anything that could become something. She had no clear plan yet, just a hunger to build, which had always been her truest instinct. When she saw the listing for a 1996 Thomas-built school bus, decommissioned, non-running, selling for parts, she almost kept scrolling. Then she looked at the dimensions. 35 feet long, 8 feet wide. She opened a notes app and started doing math. The shelter director, a quiet woman named Paulette who had seen thousands of families pass through her doors, watched Jennifer spread hand-drawn floor plans across the dining table one evening and said nothing for a long moment. Then she said, "You know, I've seen people leave here and go back to exactly where they started. And I've seen people leave here and go somewhere nobody expected. You're going somewhere nobody expected." Jennifer folded up her drawings and said thank you. That night she cried, but it was a different kind of crying than before. Her sister Dana gave her the back lot reluctantly and with conditions. The bus had to be hidden behind the fence line. It could not be an eyesore. It could not be permanent, or at least, it could not look permanent. Jennifer agreed to everything with a straight face and a private smile, because she already knew what she was going to build, and it was not going to look like anything Dana was imagining. The first weekend, she and her kids cleaned out the bus together. Noah found a lunchbox from 1987 and declared it treasure. Lily organized every nut and bolt they removed into labeled sandwich bags with her best handwriting. Marcus, who was 11 and at that age where everything is slightly embarrassing, worked harder than anyone and did not say a single word about it being embarrassing. Jennifer watched her 3 children work and felt something she had not felt in 2 years. Not hope exactly, which is sometimes a fragile thing, but certainty. The quiet, solid certainty that they were going to be fine. She tore out all 47 seats herself over 3 days. Her arms ached in places she had not known had muscles. She sold the seats online for $40 total and used that money to buy a shop light and a box of contractor bags. Every decision in those early weeks was like that. Every small resource recycled into the next small resource. Nothing wasted, everything purposeful. She kept a running spreadsheet on her phone that she updated every night before sleep, tracking every dollar, every material, every measurement. The spreadsheet was 31 rows long before she spent a single cent on actual building materials. She was not building a bus. She was building a home. There is a difference, and Jennifer felt it in every decision. A bus is a vehicle. A home is a sequence of choices made on behalf of the people you love. The ceiling height that lets your tallest child stand straight, the window placement that catches morning light, the small shelf beside the door where backpacks go so mornings are never chaotic. Jennifer designed every inch of that interior the way she had once designed rooms for clients, except this time the client was her own family, and she knew exactly what they needed. Neighbors drove slowly past the fence line, catching glimpses of her working. Some stopped to ask questions. A retired carpenter named Gerald from 3 streets over appeared one Saturday morning with a cup of coffee and a tape measure and said simply, "What are you working on?" When she showed him the plans, he studied them for 4 minutes without speaking. Then he said, "Your joist spacing is off by 2 inches on the platform bed frame. Want me to show you?" He came back every Saturday after that. He never asked for anything. He just brought his coffee and his tape measure and his 60 years of knowing how things fit together, and he gave them freely. That is the thing about building something real in plain sight. It attracts people who want to help. The woman at the hardware store who quietly applied her employee discount. The Facebook group for bus conversions that answered every question Jennifer posted within an hour, always kindly, always specifically. The shelter director Paulette who showed up one afternoon with 3 other shelter residents who wanted to learn something new, and they spent a Saturday afternoon learning how to install rigid foam insulation and left dusty and happy. Jennifer fed everyone sandwiches. It was the best afternoon she could remember in years. By the end of the 2nd month, the skeleton of something extraordinary was beginning to take shape. The subfloor was down, level and solid. The wall framing was complete. When Jennifer stood inside the empty frame space for the first time on a quiet Sunday morning before her kids woke up, she put her hand flat against one of the wall studs and stood very still. The wood was smooth and exact and true. She had cut every piece herself. Outside, the November air was cold and the lot was muddy and her boots were wrecked beyond saving. But inside that framed metal shell, something warm was already beginning. Not warmth from a heater, warmth from intention. Warmth from the fact that every measurement had been made with her children in mind, every decision aimed at one single outcome. The moment her 3 kids would walk through a door and know, in the way children know things before they can say them, that this place was made for them. She had 11 days left at the shelter when she bought the bus. Now she had an extension, and a plan, and Gerald's tape measure advice, and 47 bolts in Lily's labeled sandwich bags, and a spreadsheet 31 rows long, and a certainty that had no cracks in it. She took one more photo of the framed interior, added it to the folder on her phone labeled Simply Home, and went to make breakfast for her kids. 8 months later, the bus had heated bamboo floors, built-in bunk beds with USB ports, a kitchen with subway tile backsplash, and LED lighting. Jennifer wired herself after watching YouTube tutorials. She insulated every panel, installed a composting toilet, and mounted a rooftop solar system using a $200 tax refund and donated equipment from a local electrician who saw her story on a community Facebook page. Total build cost, $4,200. But the number that mattered more than $4,200 was this one: 3. 3 children who now had their own beds, their own drawers, their own small corners of a world their mother had built entirely for them. That is the number Jennifer thought about when people asked how she did it. Not the budget. Not the hours. Not the YouTube tutorials watched at midnight with cracked phone screen brightness turned all the way up. The number 3. Everything else was just the method. The interior had come together the way good things always come together, not all at once, but in a sequence of right decisions, each one opening the door to the next. After the framing came the insulation, 2 inches of rigid foam sealed with spray foam at every edge, which Gerald inspected with the quiet approval of someone who has seen bad insulation work and recognizes its opposite. After the insulation came the wall panels, thin birch plywood that Jennifer sanded by hand to a finish so smooth that Noah, her youngest, pressed his cheek against it on the first day and announced it felt like a pillow. She painted the panels the softest possible shade of warm white, not stark, not cold, but the color of morning light coming through a clean window. She had sketched the bunk bed system 14 times before she got it right. The final version was a triple configuration built into the rear third of the bus, Marcus on top, Danny in the middle, Lily on the bottom, each bunk with its own reading light, its own USB charging port, its own small shelf for books and whatever small objects feel important when you are 5 or 8 or 11 years old. Lily kept a smooth river stone on hers. Danny kept a baseball card. Marcus kept a photograph of the four of them taken at the shelter Christmas party, printed on a small square of photo paper, tucked into the corner of the shelf where only he could see it easily. Jennifer built those bunks over 2 weekends with Gerald beside her, handing her screws, reading measurements twice before she cut anything, telling her stories about the houses he had built over 60 years that she only half heard because she was concentrating, but somehow absorbed anyway. When the last bunk was finished and sanded and fitted with its mattress, Gerald sat down on the bottom one, tested the frame with both hands, and said, "That'll outlast both of us." Jennifer laughed, and it was the laugh of someone who has been serious for a very long time and is finally allowed a moment of pure relief. The kitchen was her favorite part. She had allocated the front third of the bus for the kitchen and living area, and she designed it the way she had once designed kitchens for clients with large budgets, thinking first about how a person actually moves through a space, what they reach for in the morning, where their eyes go when they look up from the stove. She found white subway tile at a salvage warehouse for 12 cents per tile and spent one entire Saturday on her knees laying it herself, grout lines so clean and even that the hardware store woman, who had stopped by to see the progress, actually photographed it and posted it on her personal Instagram with the caption, "Hand-laid by a single mom who learned from YouTube." I am in awe. The countertop was butcher block, cut from a single piece of maple Jennifer found at an estate sale for $40. She oiled it 3 times. The sink was a farmhouse-style single basin she sourced from an online marketplace for $22 from a kitchen renovation. The faucet was brushed nickel, the one item in the entire build she bought new without apology, because some details exist to remind you that you deserve beautiful things. She installed a 2-burner propane cooktop and a compact convection oven stacked beneath it. Above the cooktop she mounted a small range hood that vented through the bus wall, Gerald's design, engineered on a napkin over coffee one morning and executed perfectly. The refrigerator was a 12-volt compressor unit running directly off the solar system, humming quietly and efficiently, keeping the milk cold and the leftovers fresh and doing its small, essential job without complaint. Jennifer respected that about it. The solar system on the roof was the piece that had seemed most impossible at the start and turned out to be the piece that attracted the most help. She had posted in the bus conversion Facebook group asking for advice on sizing a system for a family of 4 in a northern climate, and within 6 hours she had 47 detailed responses, 3 offers of used equipment, and a direct message from a licensed electrician named Rob who lived 40 minutes away and said he had been following her build thread for weeks and would like to help wire the system properly, for free, because, and these were his exact words, "What you're doing matters. And I want to be part of it." Rob came on a Saturday with his son, who was 9 and wore a too big tool belt and handed things to his father with tremendous seriousness. They spent 12 hours on the roof and inside the bus running wire, installing the charge controller, connecting the battery bank Jennifer had assembled from reconditioned lithium cells she had sourced and tested herself over 3 painstaking weeks. When they flipped the main breaker for the first time and every light in the bus came on simultaneously, warm LED glow filling every corner, the refrigerator beginning its quiet hum, the USB ports at each bunk blinking to life, Noah said "oh" in the softest voice and then said nothing else for a full minute. Jennifer said nothing either. She stood in the center of her kitchen and looked at the light falling across the subway tile and the butcher block and the warm white walls and the bamboo floor glowing golden, and she understood in that moment something she had been working toward without fully naming. She had not just built shelter. She had built atmosphere. She had built the feeling of being held by a place, the sensation that a home at its best provides, that you are known here, that this space was made with you in mind, that you belong inside it completely. The bamboo floor had gone in last, over a radiant heat mat that Jennifer had found discounted at a flooring liquidator and installed herself following a tutorial she watched 4 times. The floor was the finishing detail that transformed everything. The moment a conversion stops looking like a modified vehicle and starts looking like a place where a family lives. Warm, smooth, real. On the first morning after it was installed, all 3 kids ate breakfast sitting on it because none of them wanted to leave. When a neighbor named Carrie, who had been skeptical from the beginning and had not bothered to hide it, looked through the bus door for the first time and stood in the entrance for a long silent moment, she finally said, "Jennifer, this looks like something out of a magazine." Jennifer thanked her and meant it without any edge, because she understood that Carrie had only been seeing what anyone sees when they look at a broken bus, the obvious story, the expected ending. Jennifer had simply been living a different story the entire time. The local reporter came on a Wednesday. She had heard about the build through Paulette at the shelter, who had mentioned it to someone, who had mentioned it to someone else, the way news travels in small towns through the quiet infrastructure of people who pay attention. The reporter walked through the bus slowly, asking questions, writing things down in a small notebook. When she reached the bunk beds and saw the river stone and the baseball card and the small photograph on Marcus's shelf, she stopped writing for a moment. Then she wrote something down and underlined it. The story ran on a Friday. By Sunday, it had been shared 11,000 times. By Tuesday, designers were posting it in professional forums. By Thursday, a flooring company had called offering materials. A solar installer left a message. A hardware brand sent an email. Jennifer read every message and responded to each one personally, because she had been raised to understand that when someone extends kindness, you acknowledge it fully. But the moment that settled into her deepest memory, the one she would describe years later when people asked her what it all meant, happened before any of that. It happened on the very first night, when the build was complete and the lights were on and the floor was warm and the beds were made with clean sheets. Noah was already in his bunk. Lily had arranged her stone and her books exactly as she wanted them. Marcus had tucked his photograph into its corner. Jennifer turned off the main overhead light, leaving only the soft glow of the reading lamps at each bunk, and she stood in the kitchen doorway listening to her children settle into the particular quiet of people who feel safe. Then Noah's small voice came from the bottom bunk, "Mom, this is the most beautiful house I've ever seen," and Jennifer pressed her hand flat against the birch panel wall, smooth as a pillow, solid as a promise, and whispered back, "I know, baby. I built it for you." And she had. Every single inch of it.